Nick, why build the smart port at Alliance? What did you see? Why was the time now?
If you look at Alliance Smart Port and you try to judge it against other places, it's a very unique space. There's nothing like it in the United States. In terms of inland ports, if you add the roughly 60 million square feet of warehousing space we've developed to date, we have another roughly 60 million yet to build out over the next 30 years. Our all of it largely bifurcated by I-35, a border interstate, the Alliance Airport, which again moves about 2.1 billion pounds of cargo freight a year, the BNSF intermodal facility that moves about a million containers a year with direct connections to Mexico and the ports of LA and Long Beach. Pull all those things together, and you have roughly, if you'd rank it, in the top 15 largest inland ports in the United States, again, centered in one of the fastest growing regions in the US. If you don't know, we have the Mobility Innovation Zone out here. It started about 5 or 6 years ago. That was really an exercise that we decided made a lot of sense from a lot of conversations we were having with our customers at the time and continuing, where they had a lot of interest to deploy a lot of technologies, whether it was in the airspace, in the warehouse, or outside the warehouse, or along the roadways, that they believed made a lot of sense to do so because it would lend to the efficiency or improvement of their operations. That was a great success. If it made sense to deploy that technology here, we were a big supporter of it. If it made sense to deploy it somewhere else, we were a big supporter of it. Or if it didn't make sense, we were a big supporter of it because it allowed everyone to just move on to the next thing. Fast forward a little bit, and we hit the winter events of 20 and 21. Where our grid here in Texas was severely strained, which really was an eye opener, I think, for most people in Texas. That you come from an energy state, you assume that reliability is going to be there, but there are a lot of stressors in there, and there's a lot of factors that go into that. So trying to be able to figure out, okay, if you have a lot of these strategic industries that are here, whether it's manufacturing or defense, how can we find more resiliency of power? That was one. And then layered onto those same years, of course, as we all experienced as well, was the pandemic. And that really exposed a lot of weak points in the supply chain, again, that we all also felt. And so through the learning exercise of the MIS, again, the exposures of the things that we all saw, our expertise and involvement in all the industries, partnerships that we have on the local level, state level, and even the federal level involvement really came to us to say, okay, well, what are the main things we want to focus on and layer atop this, inland port to make it more reliable and resilient and efficient, to enhance this unique ecosystem that we've built and continue to make it unique and as enhanced as we can over the next 35 years as we did over the first 35 years. So the timing really was just through a multitude of events and culmination of learning, but we're really excited for the things that we have planned for it. And it's been a great success, planning and deploying some of those things already.
Michael, if you look at the amount of goods, you have 2.1 billion cargo freight, you're going to 120 million square feet. There's a lot of goods. And to me, it says, oh, wow, we got to do some transportation planning because a lot of goods are moving in and out. From a transportation planning perspective, how do you plan for that? And then on the backside, how do you plan for that growth that's coming?
Well, I think it's a very good question. If you go back, say, 4 decades, the region's at 3 million people. We're now north of 8.5 million people. We're growing at a million people every 7 years. We're the fourth largest region in the country. We're the largest region in the country that doesn't have access to a seaport. So our transportation, supporting your point, our transportation has to be done via aviation, the interstate highway system, and through our Class 1 railroads. So we focus at three levels at the Council of Governments at the same time. We focus at the neighborhood level, focus at the regional level, and we focus on international logistics. So the cool part of this particular partnership we're talking about today is all three levels come into play. You have near neighbor transportation investments that are critical and quote the neighborhood, in this case a corporate neighborhood. You have transportation investments to connect to the regional system. This particular smart port is probably at the crossroads of $5 billion of recent freeway improvements on three major freeways: State Highway 114, State Highway 170, and Interstate 35W. And the introduction of dynamically priced managed lanes, where every 6 minutes the express lane changes its price, maximizing either goods movement or people hurrying to catch a plane to have a guaranteed reliable speed, which will be a major player in this particular application. And then obviously you're focusing on transportation on international logistics. So with Burlington Northern being a major Class 1 railroad provider here at Alliance, they're moving goods from China and international locations in very sophisticated logistics chains. Our ability to then take neighborhood, region, and international logistics within the Dallas-Fort Worth region. Remember, in the value of time of goods movement on our roadway system is 5 times what a passenger car is. So if you really want great returns on investment, you pay attention to the goods movement side because the value of times are so high. So you take those 3 elements, the point you made, hey, how do you do this focused on a region that's growing so fast? In our interest on focusing on the goods movement side as much as the passenger side, you then reach out to partners like Alliance Hillwood, who has the home of one of the largest intermodal Class 1 railroads in the country, one of the largest in our region. We have both UP and Burlington Northern here. And then you start getting on the blackboard and brainstorming by bringing in the best and the brightest from the technology world. How do you get to scale, and how do you bring in technology? Our goal in this Smart Port and on these transportation items is not just help solve Hillwood Alliance, not just help the Dallas-Fort Worth region. I know this may sound bold to you, but we want to be a national model on how everyone else in the country can learn from this integration of transportation investments, dedicated truck lanes, next generation databases, and integrate information across this spectrum. The best place to do this, probably in the world, is at Alliance, with their warehousing, with their access to the interstate highways, with their air cargo airport, and with a Burlington Northern intermodal facility. This is a really great partnership that the federal government recognized in funding our Smart Port and leading with dedicated truck lanes to increase the reliability and the importance of the goods movement component to and from these major freeway facilities.
There's a lot to unpack there, Michael. I'm curious, what role did Mr. Perot's desire to embrace technology and build and his willingness to innovate play in this?
Well, my relationship with Hillwood and Mr. Perot goes back a long time. It started, and we don't have time to really get into this type of history, but it started with the introduction of the airport. So the introduction of a general aviation airport led to his idea of an air cargo airport, led to Nick's tremendous success with regard to those providers who are moving that magnitude of cargo. It was not our idea, oh, this will be an air cargo airport. It was Mr. Perot's integration, the horizontal integration of aviation, air cargo, access to an interstate highway, access to an intermodal facility. And then, as Nick said, 2 decades later, we now wish to add now a greater level of data technology, automation, and dedicated truck lanes for reliability. These are the things that once you start down this path of innovation and you start putting your high school band together of dedicated people focused on these outcomes, you then get partnerships that end up winning a national Smart Port application to keep the momentum moving ahead.
Nick, Alliance and the MIS, the autonomous trucking capital of the world, there are more companies that are leasing property from you and not operating in Alliance than anywhere else in the world. The dedicated lanes are fascinating. At some point, do you see autonomous trucks going on those dedicated lanes?
Absolutely. We call them the DFW technology corridors. I mean, because that's really what they are. If you don't know, I mean, there's a state-led initiative to do a very similar model that we're doing here at Alliance to connect the triangle. So if you don't know, of course, the triangle is Austin, going up to DFW, Dallas, included in that, obviously. You connect Waco, Houston, and San Antonio, all the major metropolitan areas. That is I-35, 45, 10, and 20. And the Texas Connected Freight Corridor system is really the state putting along those highways, along the road technology to accommodate automated vehicles, particularly for freight movement. Well, when you get to the DFW area, largely because of Michael's, great efforts and success building out these, whether they're managed lanes and toll lane systems, if you look at the map of them, they spiderweb efficiently, of course, for obvious reasons, all across the DFW space. So if you can imagine in a future state, those autonomous vehicles once they reach the DFW area, then getting into those managed and or toll lanes, and then having a greater efficiency with that technology extending beyond the interstates closer to their end destination. That was, amongst many other reasons, why we were looking at and are looking at the technology to deploy here in Alliance within some of the roadways that are key and core to, heavy logistics movements, again, over in what we call the Westport area by the airport and the rail facility, because we didn't want to have, a black door to nothing, if you will, with the technology and for those users. So when they come off that roadway, they would have the ability to then continue seamlessly with that technology right to their end destination. And even for that last mile move, although a different user would still have the ability to leverage that technology for example, autonomous drayage trucks that could take goods from the warehouse to the rail facility or vice versa. So I absolutely do see them as being used in that space in the future.
Michael, this is a more of a broader Texas question from what Nick said. Is there a desire from leadership in Texas to optimize the movement of goods in the state, and what you're building at NCTCOG in North Dallas? Is that just one part of the overall vision that the state of Texas has?
Yeah, the way I would describe it is I believe there's this Texas spirit, especially coming from the legislature, that wishes Texas to be a leader in transportation technology. Now, it may apply to other things outside my area of expertise, but if you look at the rulemaking the legislature did 8 years ago, it really created the marketplace to reduce risk for automated companies to come to Texas. And the legislature, basically created a marketplace through legislation that created an environment for autonomous companies to operate in Texas. It's not a coincidence that those companies have come to Texas, and I think the legislature should be given that credit and wisdom with regard to it. I don't think it's coincidence that if you're going to come to Texas, come to the Dallas-Fort Worth region because of the public-private partnership mentality that Nick described. And it's not just about this particular project. The Dallas-Fort Worth region has a public-private sector partnership where we all are good at staying in our lanes and leveraging our capability, where the public sector encourages the private sector, doesn't beat on the private sector, and the private sector reaches out and says, look, we're not really good on these public sector issues of environmental clearance and building transportation system. And it applies to everything we do in the Dallas-Fort Worth region. I'm not sure that's always the case in other parts of the state. So we now have hydrogen just recently approved in this triangle that Nick described. So hydrogen refueling of trucks creates the ability of now hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles to be moving. I think when you look at the physics of a truck, I think it's better to be hydrogen fueled than battery laden in that process. So I think now this technology now applies all the way to hydrogen. One of those hydrogen refueling stations will be at Alliance. So you now have this capability where you keep layering these advances on technology, where now Texas wishes to lead in hydrogen fuel cell electric as part of this particular process. But going back to the Smart Port and going back to this public-private partnership, introducing automation, I think the first automation you're going to see is within 30 miles of this particular location. Yes, you're going to see long distance autonomous trucking. The private sector is still struggling with how best to get that implemented, and can they get their return on investment with regard to that. Several of those companies are proceeding. Some of those companies are no longer proceeding. But the mathematics of being able to deliver an autonomous haul or a dredge movement from an intermodal facility to these next generation warehousing locations that have next generation robotics within the warehouse, you're going to see some huge synergies in this smart port application over time, where it may be more manual in the beginning, where the data elements and the reliability of the transportation system is used to gain efficiency. And then I think it just naturally will be built over time, where other elements of this technology and automation will just naturally, when the user in the marketplace and the customer wishes to use it, will just automatically naturally go to those next items. So keeping with this theme, you have a neighborhood play with regard to automation and goods movement, and you have this whole statewide, regional, international logistics play with regard to this automation as well. Both of those can occur at exactly the same time, based on the interest of the client and based on the interest of the private sector company.
You're 100% right. what the Texas legislature did, and thanks to Governor Abbott for signing it into law, laid the foundation for the autonomy economy to grow in Texas, because there is a clear level playing field around automation. And we saw one of the most successful wins for Texas was the relocation of Tesla. There was an article this morning in the Austin Statesman about the growth of Waymo in the Austin area. And you have obviously the growth of Tesla with Gigafactory, and we're starting to see autonomous vehicles move their way into the DFW area, which would be another expansion market. Texas is leaning in on all things autonomy and automation because they understand the positive benefits of it. Nick, Mr. Pro, as I said earlier, has a long history of embracing innovation. Your colleague Ian Kinney at Hillwood does a wonderful job engaging with the autonomy community. When you look at warehouse automation, there's be all sorts of different types of automation. Will Hillwood incubate, say, perhaps autonomous forklifts, or experiment with new technologies and incubate them so when they are ready for prime time, your customers can deploy them at Alliance?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's really the core of what the MIS spirit is all about. So if there are, using that as an example, whether it's autonomous forklifts, yard trucks, whatever it may be, even the ancillary systems that need to be deployed to support those types of things. Like I said earlier, private 5G networks, we're really leaning into expanding and building out the telecommunications infrastructure out here as a sub base to all of that to grow on top on. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if there's ways that we can assist, and that may even go into, feedback we get from our customers in many ways, but one of which is how we even design warehouses of the future. How can they be, better laid out that allows for whether it's autonomous use or just these new types of vehicles to be used in different ways that a warehouse could be adjusted, which we all know, warehouses from the 90s that we built out in what we call our gateway area, a lot of that we probably wouldn't lay out as, was something we build today because just so much has changed from the 1990s. And that's just part of this iterative, learning experience that we have out here, which is very unique to us for all the reasons Michael and I are stating. And it's largely because of, again, what we have in our DNA as a company, but just being out here as a stakeholder in Alliance for so long and being involved in its development, you can see that progressive growth and advancement, again, across our totality of our development area. And it's a huge testament to why we're one of the many reasons why we're so successful. But yeah, any way we can help our customers and or find ways to become more efficient or leverage new tech to assist them and this area, we're absolutely going to do it.
I was speaking with Todd Lewis over at Prologis about warehouse automation. He was explaining that one of the most critical things when you develop the site is the flooring has to be completely level. And I was like, oh, the robot can do all sorts of things. Like, no, the flooring has to be completely level. Are you looking at developing these warehouses at the Smart Port for an automated future? Perhaps you're doing the flooring, you're putting sensors in, you have the connectivity. Are you developing them to be future-proof for automation and autonomy?
It's really user by user. So to answer your question directly, yes, if we have a user that really wants to leverage tech inside the warehouse and there's certain build-to-suit specs that we would need to meet to allow them to do whatever it is, yeah, of course, we would absolutely look at that and work with them to build that into the building itself. And again, any user that comes to us within the core of, the Alliance Smart Port area, which again, as we reference, is the Westport portion of our development, those buildings we know have a unique and special purpose because of their location and all the ancillary infrastructure built around them. So we are a little more, I would say, judicious in who and how we market them. And we're already talking to, potential customers that, to your example, would be interested in that. And again, that would be something on a case-by-case basis we would build into those buildings.
Michael, sensors are getting a life of their own these days. They're seemingly everywhere. Our whole homes operate on sensors. Are you starting to put sensors into the roadway infrastructure to gather data that can help you optimize the movement of goods on the roadways?
Yeah, so we have a major project where we are going to start putting all of the information and sensor data in the cloud, and we want to then test it. So let's say you're an OEM company and you wish to read our 7,000 traffic signal traffic controllers because you're like Audi and you wish to tell the driver, hey, pay attention, the traffic signal will turn green in 18, 17, 16, 15 seconds, which we applaud because we're losing so much of our intersection capacity by people who aren't paying attention when the light turns green. When you were a kid, you didn't have a device in your car other than a radio. So you were laser focused on the light turning green. And now you have a very sophisticated device in your phone that tells you to do everything other than pay attention to the traffic signal. So we have lots of technology. Our board just approved $40 million to develop minimum technology standards for our 7,000 traffic signals. So we'll be retrofitting our traffic signals and start putting in visual detection, get rid of the loop detectors in the pavement that probably aren't working anyway, and have video detection with regard to cars and trucks. You'll see us move forward in the next 6 months on traffic signals near high volume goods movement locations with next generation traffic signals to move goods movement. Back to this value of time is 5 times higher than cars. So if it's an intermodal facility, a major warehouse, where are the top 50 locations that produce truck vehicles that wish to go 1, 2, 3, 5 signalized intersections in order to get onto the major transportation corridor? Where are those 130 traffic signals, and what technology do we have to put on them so we can help with efficiency, reliability, productivity, less emissions? Because as you know, on a hard acceleration of a truck, if it's at a regular traffic signal, you may get 1 or 2 trucks out of the yard per cycle when we could be putting in detection and saying, oh, we have 8 trucks now pulling out at the same time. We're going to increase the green time and actually let the whole group of them go. We may have to eventually change state law to permit us to increase the cycle lengths for green times at some of these good movements locations in order to even do better. But this notion of being in the 4th largest region and having public-private sector partners like Nick that are in the goods movement business because of the nature of their business, have it be large trucks or aviation, now goods movement planes, and obviously being next to an interstate highway that gets trucks coming from other locations unrelated to Burlington Northern. It just continues this, and you probably feel it. Why does Dallas-Fort Worth always become the leader now in hydrogen, refueling for hydrogen electric trucks? Next generation traffic signals for major truck and signalized intersections with greater green times. It just is a natural evolution of this particular initiative. And if you just pay attention to the data drives you in our particular case in the goods movement. And I really believe this Smart Port, which is our focus of our discussion today, is really a potential logistics deal changer where I believe Hillwood and Alliance can be a national showcase. Now, you may not have everything they have. You may not have this air cargo airport and connection to 3 freeways and a dynamically priced managed lane. And our project that we have now that just got awarded with dedicated truck lanes and now technology to move cargo containers in real time in a much more efficient system with the just-in-time arrival of trucks, which is our eventual desire as part of the Smart Port. But as an MPO director in public service, I have an obligation to be a national showcase that if we can do it here, then we wish other entities, Nick may not want me to say this because it hurts his competitive advantage, but if I can do some things that help the Port of Houston or the Port of Savannah or the New York Port Authority by introducing some combinations of technology that may be applicable to them, then I think it's in the best interest of our nation. So us laser focused on this neighborhood through international logistics that you're talking about gives us this. You wake up every day and why can't we try doing this? Or Nick might call and say, hey, we have a client that wishes to do Y. Would you be interested in dealing with this technology company that wants to have dedicated truck lanes coming off of our interstate highway to increase the reliability of our port? Hey, that sounds like a brilliant idea. Let's talk to them.
Will those dedicated lanes be a dedicated exit off of the freeway right into the port?
Yeah, so it starts up at the interstate highway, and this particular project that got funded is dedicated structures that instead of the truck having to go through a series of signalized intersections, they stay on the thoroughfare street, and these direct ramps take them over these intersections right onto the intermodal facility going to Alliance, of which Alliance was recently built with the ability of adding lanes. So you'll see the application of our first dedicated truck lanes on thoroughfare streets, and our first dedicated direct connectors for trucks arguing that the value at this particular location is largely trucks. When you look at the location in the shadow of the intermodal facility in Hillwood, this is occurring not at the expense of benefits that could go to passenger cars. These particular movements don't have passenger cars, but we will be testing this reliability. You have dedicated regular freeway lanes, in our case, dynamically priced managed lanes that give reliability to trucks if they wish to do it, getting off onto a dedicated direct connectors onto what would be dedicated thoroughfare lanes. So you can picture these trucks that are queuing on these inside dedicated lanes, and the whole data driven inspiration that came from Hillwood. Is there a way you can match up the arrivals of the trucks with the arrivals of the containers that are coming from the intermodal facility to minimize how many lifts one has to do to optimize getting the right cargo container on the right truck? I think in the beginning, you'll see most of these will be human drivers, but over time, you might see a combination of autonomous vehicles that are waiting for their cargo container, potentially being put on by an autonomous lift, potentially going to a warehouse that has autonomous forklifts. And if you can imagine, we as humans, we tend to want to work during the day. We don't tend to like to work all night, but 10 or 15 years from now, we have containers moving to warehouses autonomously through the night by a combination of dedicated roadway lanes and customers who wish to have dedicated technology. We're not going to have that on day one because it will be human driven, but it scales. This whole project scales easily to a more autonomous future, depending on what clients wish to do, whatever, with regard to their future. And I believe, because Nick's project is so inspirational to so many next generation technology companies that wish to be at Alliance, you're going to attract, I believe Alliance is going to attract technology based goods movement initiatives that want to really push us with regard to our capabilities of reliability and automation with regard to these good movement items. And we would welcome it. I don't know what Nick's thoughts are on that, but
I totally agree. And I guess I would expand on one thing that Michael said that's really key to this is it's so much of this is timing with, again, who and how people are working certain hours. Again, that was one of the breakdowns we saw during COVID. It was hard to get, the labor force out there. There was already issues before COVID just because of how the shifts were going. Then you add, COVID on top of it. Everybody on both sides of the supply chain, whether it was the rail operator, in this case of Alliance, but again, this was felt everywhere, and the warehouse, everyone got congested because of those labors, the miss of timing of, arrival and delivery. A lot of people don't know the arrival and delivery times that the warehouse needs to move their goods and send them to the rail carrier, and vice versa, the rail carrier receiving the goods and being ready to get it off of their intermodal terminal and send it to the warehouse are often not aligned. And so again, you exacerbate that issue with COVID, and there was so much congestion and breakdown that reverberated all the way back to the ports. So in our efforts, again, as I alluded to earlier, trying to solve for these problems, it was the obvious thing was we need a further partnership and integration here to break down these barriers and find ways to alleviate this pain and congestion, which again exists under normal conditions. But should anything happen, especially with the tumultuous world we're in, whether it's geopolitically or heaven forbid another wild pandemic, there would be safeguards in there that this, if it is felt, it'll be much more minimized from what we experienced before. And again, you can layer on automation into that, the smart development of the warehouse and so forth. But again, that was one of the reasons why that 14 million square feet of warehousing space, we pulled a direct connection into the intermodal facility, BNSF's intermodal facility, so that all the goods would be able to stay on largely, dedicated roadways off the public roadway system. Those roads accepting of heavy haul, so any user of any weight could go in there, and you can better control, the environment with which they operate in. So it makes it a lot more, again, efficient and most importantly safe for those autonomous technologies to be deployed and used. And the bridge connection, that is the direct connection to the intermodal facility to the warehousing space, would also be leveraged by the use of a container depot that would allow for the users, again, whether it's the rail facility or the warehouse, to drop and hold their goods in that depot until either party is ready to deliver and or accept those goods, so that neither side is getting congestion. That reduces emissions, it reduces inefficiencies. Again, it bakes in resiliency into that. And again, it allows for better utility of the automation through a myriad of ways. And again, you also, not that we're trying to, nix jobs in any of this. I just want to make that clear because that's a big talking point with automation today. And in fact, you're probably adding more jobs to the marketplace by all the additional, ancillary jobs that are being created through the management, maintenance, and design related to all of this automation technology that are higher quality. They're, better environments for people to work in, while also solving the issues that you had these positions that a lot of people didn't frankly want to fill because you were an operator at odd time in inclement weather, and it was just tough. And especially in areas like DFW that has a low unemployment rate, a very strong labor pool, but it's a great economy. It's a great place to be. So having a lens for those types of people who would have filled these roles to actually have better, more advanced positions to go into. And we're also furthering that, just as a quick aside, through our relationship with a lot of the local ISDs out here, the school districts, to get involved and to start prepping at the high school level kids for these next generational jobs that they then can advance through trade schools and then go stay in the DFW should they want to, with all the stuff that we're doing out here, with all the companies that we're locating here. So it's a very holistic approach that we're really, to also echo Michael's comments, we're not doing it selfishly. This is for region, this is for the state, and absolutely for the nation. If a lot of this stuff can be springboarded to other ports and areas of the United States, we're all about it. That was, again, one of the reasons we had in the MIS was an open learning test center. And if it worked here, fantastic. But if they're like, this isn't going to work, but it worked really good in the Northeast, go ahead and use it. We have pride of ownership, but we also don't have pride of ownership. Go and take it and use it somewhere else. If it makes the whole country more efficient and reduces these issues in the supply chain, like I said earlier, we have a connection to Mexico, we have a connection to Houston, we have a connection to LA and Long Beach. Those issues that happen out there, we feel them here. So if they can be alleviated through things that we learn and explore out here, great. It helps us, by association, really. So it culminates to a lot of great points and a lot of great partnerships. And again, we're excited about it.
The most important thing you said, I need to highlight the apprenticeship, the vocational schools. You're helping individuals on a career path without incurring the albatross around their neck known as student debt. They're getting the skills they need. They're getting a clear path to a job. You're embracing automation. Michael said it brilliantly. You're exporting it to the rest of the country and the rest of the world because you're developing and incubating this technology. And it is a model, and it's a proven model. And there's economic data that backs up this model. As you continue to innovate, well, could we see perhaps freight tunnels, boring freight tunnels being built there? Can we see that as the next kind of logical step in your innovation journey?
I'd say that there'd probably be a higher chance of that happening through the use of passenger rail than it would be specifically in Alliance, which I know Michael that's near and dear to his heart. So I'll let him answer that.
I do want to reinforce one important thing Nick said, and you just talked about it and said, hey, one of the most important things Nick's talked about is this incubator on the human side with regard to training. I would be remiss if I didn't say as part of our application, we put in a workforce component to this. Because when you study the problems in the logistics chain, it's not just all about technology, reliability, and goods movement and system. It's the human side. And we don't want to be successful and have a problem that we don't have the human capital to then implement it and get people certified in cybersecurity and all the things we need. So we wrote into our application a workforce component. And I believe anyone who wishes to be in this business, you're going to have a workforce component. So I'm really glad Nick reinforced that particular component because we're funding workforce just as much as you may be excited with regard to dedicated truck lanes. You're probably more excited that we're funding a workforce path associated with this as well, so people can get certified. Yes, we are engaged with the Boeing company with regard to their tunnels. We are moving ahead on two major tunnel sections of our high-speed rail corridor that starts in Fort Worth, goes to Arlington, goes to Dallas, and eventually to Houston. That's also the high-speed rail path to Austin, San Antonio. It may or may not be with the Boeing company, but we do have tunnel sections. We are going to be talking to the Boeing company of other short tunnels with regard to passenger movements in large mixed-use developments in proximity to the tunnel that exists on light rail underneath Central Expressway. So instead of this new mixed-use development where all these people cross the street to get to the below-grade tunnel, maybe it's better that they just simply go down in their development and just take a horizontal people mover system a quarter of a mile into the particular station. So we are engaged with conversations with the Boeing company with regard to those elements. But we are not immune to any goods movement capability with regard to a tunneling section. We have a General Motors assembly plant. All of the famous SUVs that General Motors makes are made in Arlington, Texas. The railhead is a third of a mile to its east. We are looking at autonomous sleds to load General Motors product onto an autonomous sled, go on an autonomous facility to the railhead. And in that process, we also looked at tunnel sections where the cars would come off and go on an autonomous sled under the freeway through a tunnel section. So one of the things I think your audience should hopefully get by this particular point in time, we work backwards from whatever the problem tells us to do, and whatever options have to be put on the table to solve it. Sometimes it's a traditional direct connector roadway, it might be a tunnel, might be data, might be technology, might be 5G, maybe it's workforce development. You got a public-private partnership team in Dallas-Fort Worth on the transportation side. There's no one person that has the capability of carrying the water across all of that spectrum, but we're really good at putting the best and the brightest across the whole spectrum to deliver the most efficient path forward with regard to that outcome. And if it involves boring a tunnel with the Boeing company or someone else, those are put on the table, and we got some examples in our region where we're having those conversations right now.
From a student's perspective, Nick's building at Alliance, and Michael, what you're building with NCTCOG is you're building the future. Is that where enter an apprenticeship program, go to the vocational school, you too can build the future? Does that become a calling card or an excitement or a motivation for some of these individuals to explore it?
I would certainly say so. I mean, if you're a student out here, you're surrounded by it. And then the direct engagement we have, us, Hillwood, as a development company, as well as our, partners that we have in Alliance, we are so engaged with those school districts that they get exposed to a lot of it, again, really even all the way to middle school, but most importantly, high school, where there's so many things that are new age, if you will, that you don't know they exist until you're again exposed to it. So the students here, frankly, they have a great advantage just being, involved with Alliance and who's out here and seeing these next generational jobs, living in an area that provides this as a potential, job opportunity for them. And so hearing that, and, I hate to use the word marketing, it's really just an exposure or learning opportunity for that next generational workforce. It's a great opportunity for them. And we've done this all the way back in time and are still doing it at Pro Field at the airport, getting kids involved in the aviation space to assist in that. And this was, again, to Michael's point, the next generation progression of all the things that we're doing and deploying and developing out here in Alliance is like, well, this makes sense to do it because these are the players and companies that are going to be out here. This is the technology, and we're going to need jobs to support it. Let's continue our engagement and offer that opportunity and start a program to support it.
Supporting both of you in this conversation, it is a very conscious element. You can go on and become really cool and go to a traditional 4-year university, or you can be really cool and go get your certifications. We have a major project with the Department of Defense. We happen to be home to a whole bunch of very dedicated Bell, Lockheed Martin, other companies. They are moving away from the hey, let's go get a 4-year aeronautical engineer, and then we'll take 3 years to train them after they come to us. They want someone trained in cybersecurity, get your patch on carbon fiber, get your patch on logistics, get your path on automation, get your different patches of certifications. So it is a conscious effort on our part to do the same in our fields of transportation. Hey, go get certified in cybersecurity. Go get certified in next generation traffic signal technology. Go get certified in 5G communication. And sometimes, what Nick and I laugh about all the time, we try to take days, months, and years off of the logistics chain. You're now seeing that, supporting your point, on the education side. Instead of getting the 4-year degree person and then teaching him for 2 years what you do in your business, start teaching what you do in your business back at the community high school and the community college level. And they may go get a 4-year degree, or they may go get 8 certifications of specialty. And Nick and I are creating a path forward for one is not better than the other. It's whatever is in the best interest of you and your family and what you want to do, because the world is changing so fast. That traditional degree is not as reliable and flexible and important as that person who maybe learns the latest system of thinking that easily can rotate to the next method of system of thinking. So you'll see that in our Smart Port, but you already see that in our Department of Defense industry, and the phrase they use is agile curriculum to create a more flexible, robust initiative. And I think what Hillwood does every day is they're reinventing that business every single day. Talk about an agile company, and I think you can see the dividend that it pays, and the type of company that wishes to be part of the Alliance Hillwood location.
Hillwood's building the future in North Texas. I'm really curious, when the smart port comes online, what will the economic impact of that smart port be on the region of DFW?
Yeah, that's a great question. I probably couldn't give you an exact dollar amount, but I mean, in terms of it coming online, it's happening now. I mean, we're building buildings out in that 1,100 acre space that I referenced. We're always marketing to unique customers to be out there. We have the partnerships that, we're building on the success of the grant award that we did in partnership with Michael and other municipalities and TxDOT, and then working with those same partners to continue getting, by right, certain operating stipulations and obligations out there for that the customers can leverage and use, and continuing to build out our infrastructure. I would expect all that to kind of largely be in place around the 2028 timeframe. But that economic benefit is going to build and grow, of course, over from now until then, and then continue onward to the future. But, Michael referenced, I think, roughly the $4 billion number. If you tally up a lot of, major transportation projects, including I-35 and the managed lane systems that took place out here, it'd be something, not to the $4 billion mark, but potentially, definitely within the B's, I'll just say, because everything that we're investing, if you take the $80 million that we are going to be receiving from our federal grant, plus the additionally $96 million as through additional private investment for all things Smart Port. I mean, that alone is just, our core investment, and then plus everything that's going to be born out of that from all the customers and the efficiencies gained. So huge numbers. And that's just a small portion, really, of the 27,000 acre development space that is the totality of Alliance Texas. So just a huge infusion of economic benefit that this region provides. And I wish I did have a more specific number to give you, but until some of this stuff comes to fruition, it's hard to gauge. But it's a very positive number. I can tell you that.
Well, it starts immediately. I mean, we competed and got $80 million that could easily went to some other part of the country. Infrastructure investment often has a 3 to 4 time turnover rate. So now you're looking at something closer to $250 million just in our direct connect roadway project. I think what you're going to start seeing with this communication through this particular initiative that we're doing today, your show and other things, you're going to start drawing at a higher speed. I call it people who wish to take links out of the logistics chain. Just think how inefficient a logistics chain is. It's just made of all these links. We're going to start attracting people who wish to pull the links out of that particular chain, either by some particular location that they wish to have near DFW Airport or at Hillwood, somewhere near our interstate highway. It would not surprise me if this corridor or this part of the region becomes a technology hub and attract more and more of, hey, if we're going to do this really thing, we could move to this part of the country, or we could be where the action is. And I think it'll be very difficult to then classify, are they coming to this particular location because of some direct impact to our smart port? Or are they coming to this particular area because they may not have a direct connection to our smart port, but they love the education components we're doing with regard to certifications, and they want access to those certifications for the cool thing that they're doing. And I think if we're successful, if Nick and I are successful, we're not going to know all of the things that are happening and how much was really due to the return on investment of the smart port versus people that just wish to get access to other elements in our particular region. But I think we're onto something big. It can grow naturally over time. It can be very human scale in the beginning. It doesn't have to have all these levels of automation in the beginning. One thing that's important that Nick talked about is on his side, he's building a private sector bridge structure to private sector land to develop efficiencies between Burlington Northern and their warehouses. And then our investments are on the public sector side. Once those containers leave their camp, how do we efficiently get them to nearby warehousing, DFW Airport, downtown Fort Worth, or wherever else they need to go? And I think once you see these efficiencies in movement, I always think, well, what does that then do to Burlington Northern? Does Burlington Northern then get a surge in containers that wish to get to this particular complex? Or what does it do to our dynamically priced managed lane or our freeway where someone is not moving something by train, but they're 80 miles over on the east side of Dallas-Fort Worth that wish to get to the intermodal facility or wish to get to this logistics hub of technology. So there's lots of what I call market segments to all of this that can happen, and it's going to be pretty exciting to see how it moves forward.
You're definitely on to something big. Michael, in your opinion, what does the future of autonomy and automation look like in North Texas?
I spend a lot of my time on the safety side. I'm very upset that human beings are horrible drivers of vehicles, and they do very, very horrible things while they're driving. And I can point to a post-COVID world where I believe the driving behavior in our country got worse, and people are doing really, really stupid things. So my whole hope towards automation, really on the passenger car side, is I'm going to be the person that goes to that meeting where someone says that autonomous vehicle created a fatality. And I'm going to be the person that says, you know what, but that autonomous vehicle saved 100 lives that we're not here talking about today. We are moving towards autonomous vehicles on transit on their own right of way. So transit circulators and mixed use developments, elevated. I think it's a much easier automated solution to solve. You don't have deer, you don't have moms with carriages crossing in front. They're elevated, small transit vehicles going to their destination. And then I hope the trucking community solves long distance autonomous truck travel. But I believe the marketplace is going to be short distance autonomous vehicles connected to these logistics hubs, these technology hubs, these data hubs that Alliance is creating. But for a whole bunch of safety reasons, I need autonomous vehicles because humans do really, really stupid things when they get behind the wheel.
Yes, they do. I mean, you see some individuals and everybody drives around distracted. I think it's an epidemic. It's a big problem. You're right to highlight it. I've seen people, I used to live in California. The craziest thing was somebody to the cigarette lighter put in a hair dryer and they're doing this. And then I was like, you can't make this up. And I had to take a photo. And then one time I saw somebody eating ice cream out of a bowl. You see all sorts of weird, you're not supposed to do these things in a car. And so when you have autonomy, yeah, if you want to blow your hair dry in an autonomous vehicle, be my guest. Have fun because you don't have to pay attention. Nick, we're all paying attention to what Hillwood's building at Alliance. In your opinion, what does the future of automation and autonomy look like at Alliance?
Well, I was just going to, piggyback on Michael's comments. Totally agree with him. And maybe a more different way to say it is I've always seen through my experience here at Alliance and everything I've learned about it, just as an industry, it's going to be grow from the inward out, if you will. And that's going to be specifically with freight I'm referring to, these areas that are more, call them controllable, inside the warehouse, to outside and inside the warehouse, to going to a last mile movement of shuttling goods to and fro. Perfect example, again, Smart Port from the warehouse to the rail facility or from the airport, however it needs to go. And then going beyond that, possibly to, an end destination that's within a middle mile movement, and then eventually to a long haul. Obviously, there will be parallel advancements on all those multiple fronts, but I think that it's just, like water, the easiest path to travel is what they're going to focus on first. They're going to learn and work out the kinks on the technology, advance that technology, which they can then deploy over to those long haul or more troublesome types of movements. One thing is that there's companies out there that are leaning into this, one of which we work with a lot out here in Alliance. And I see this as probably more of a model that's going to become nationally more accepted. And that is where you're going to have technology along the roadway. And, using the Tesla example, Tesla lights up their vehicles with cameras and sensors, and they're capturing all of this information in real time. But there's obvious limitations, especially to a moving vehicle, of how much it can capture, the efficiency of which it can capture, and how it can predict in all of its modeling and the computer system to figure out what moves it needs to make, when it needs to brake, how much space it needs to give to itself, and so forth, because of those visual limitations. If you augment that same system with technology along the roadway, which extends the view and allows for edge computing to be inserted and better predict and create a true 3D digital twin of that whole roadway system, not only the roadway, down to cracks in the road, but also all the other vehicles within it, way ahead of where this moving vehicle, is at, call it, 5 miles, or maybe an accident up ahead or whatever that this vehicle can't even see yet, but is getting data from this along the road tech. That level of safety is going to rapidly accelerate to a high precision of low incidences. That, in conjunction with, again, specific to DFW, leveraging potentially these automated movements through the managed lane systems, which, although of course used for general purpose vehicles, could come to a point where, if there's no issues with with a labor side of it, if you will, on the operator within this vehicle, and you can run these things in the dead of night when those managed lanes have very low traffic, and you have this technology on it, that may be where all the shuttling takes place. As we're already seeing, if you pair that with, like, for example, BNSF further leaning into its relationships with its customers to say, hey, we understand and learned during the pandemic, as I talked about earlier, this mismatch of timing. How can we better strategically locate your customer, call it JB Hunt or whomever, locate your guys' containers on our yard, because you're telling us you need 3 days of dwell for that container to sit there, where customer B is only going to be there for 24 hours. They can strategically map out their facility to better leverage their footprint so they get maximized efficiency out of it. Again, having autonomous cranes to move all this, autonomous drayage trucks to shuttle them around, that then could, again, springboard out of there on using this network that I just described, both in the short haul, middle mile, and then long haul movement. I see that as being the end all be all type of space in the end. Again, it's going to take time to get there, and it's going to, I think, as I stated, in the warehouse and grow out. But us, in doing everything we're trying to advance, kind of see this 30-year vision, as we always kind of have here at Alliance, to build the building blocks in place to have our development ready for all those things to, flip on the switch, if you will, when it comes time. But I think it's a very iterative process. It's going to take time to work out the kinks with the technology. It is disheartening that, true human nature, we focus so much on the negativity of things. And if ever there's a black eye that occurs with an autonomous company, if someone gets injured or, heaven forbid, killed, it's not good. And of course, there's going to be a whole, forensic analysis of why that happened and how to correct it moving in the future. But to our examples, and everyone sees every day driving to work, there is a heck of a lot more people injured and killed by somebody behind the wheel. And we shouldn't forget that, because even with the technology out there today, from an autonomous standpoint, it's way safer than a human behind the wheel. So just point of reference and putting things in perspective is important with that.
NCTCOG and Hillwood are building the future. They're developing it in North Texas. The future's bright. The future's autonomous. The future is smart ports. Michael, Nick, thank you so much for coming on the road to autonomy today.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us. We appreciate it.